don't do it to listen to people talk about me. But I want to echo what the vice chair has said a number of times this evening, which is that this committee showed that it could be done. And there were a lot of things that people said that, whether it was a school committee, whether it was Worcester, whether it was the Worcester Public Schools, it couldn't be done. We couldn't do a national superintendent search, certainly not a successful one. I will echo my colleagues in saying probably the longest day of my life was the day of your interview, because I spent the whole day on pins and needles going, come on, everybody really has to like her as much as I do. I couldn't really say that because that would be deliberating outside of a session, and y'all know I would never have done that. I was, of course, privileged to be the one who actually got to meet Dr. Menares in person, and then really literally had to come back and not say anything for a couple of days. But we showed that we could be successful in doing that. And I want to note that that wasn't only about process, that was also about Worcester can be the kind of place, and the Worcester Public Schools can be the kind of place where someone might actually want to come here from Southern California to lead our district. And that matters to the rest of us, I think, too, right? We can take transportation in-house, even though people say that we're not a transportation agency and we can't actually save the money and we're not going to be able to make it work with the drivers. And I stopped by transportation earlier this week when they were having a gathering, and that's just the happiest. It's not the happiest place on earth. I'd have to put a TM next to that, and Mr. Allen would yell at me. But it's such a happy place to work. And I once again this week recommended to somebody that they were looking for a job and they lived in the Valley and they were a parent and where could they find work? And I said, go right down the street and we'll train you. And I told them earlier this week that I'm not going to stop doing that just because I'm not on the school committee. But yeah, my kid gets on a morning like this morning when it's freezing cold, and I personally stood on the MBTA platform waiting for a train that didn't come. My kid got picked up by a bus. And that's a confidence that every parent now has. We can do a full reform of policy and look at every single one of our policies and manage to test the mayor's patience in doing so, because we know that the whole let's talk about language is not really his happy place. And fix it and get the references right and all of those kinds of things, and get ourselves to a place where we can actually have, as we did, and I gotta commend my colleagues for that emergency meeting we basically had yesterday of this is section D, we need the references, we need the cross references, can we look at the sentences? Okay, we're good, we're done. That's amazing, please don't lose that. We can have a working partnership with our union, which is huge for a city of this size. We don't have to always be going to grievances. We don't always be having to we can actually just sort of have people sit across the table and say, what's the issue and how do we fix it and how do we actually just make it work? Which is the point, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing here. And I do want to say that I really appreciate that transportation pushed to allow me to sign the contract tonight. That does genuinely mean a lot to me, but that's not the only place where those relationships are happening, and that's huge. And I say that not only as a school committee member, but also as a former teacher. To just sort of get it fixed is really the struggle. And also we can have a school committee that does its job. And I've mentioned to both you, Mr. Chair, and also to the superintendent in the last week or so, the thing that haunts my memory, if you're wondering what I'm thinking about at 2 a.m., it's actually this, which is the 2017 comprehensive district review, and we are now overdue for DESE to come back. So that's the thing that's haunting my memory. And one of the things that they said when they came in was their first critique was actually of the school committee. And it was because the school committee wasn't actually doing its job. And, I'm a little dubious on how well DESE knows what school committees do, but what they said was, there were many motions requesting information, and few motions by members are aligned with district leaders' priorities for improving teaching and learning. And that is actually supposed to be your job. And so if there's anything that I've been striving for the past 4 years, as you know, Mr. Chair, because Jack Foley and I met with you almost as soon as I got reelected, it's been to make sure that when DESE comes back in, that they can't say that about the Worcester School Committee. Now, I have no say over that in another week and a half. And so my challenge for those of you who are still going to be here in January is this: don't let the rest of us down. Don't let the work that we have done during this term go away and go to waste and be sort of steep away over time because it's exhausting and you have to continue to defend it. The focus on district governance, on good process, on policies that are what they should be, on questions of purview. What is the job of the school committee versus what's the job of the administration? On making sure, because they're sure as heck going to look at it because they counted last time, that the agenda is actually items that are under the school committee's purview and what they're actually supposed to be spending time on. Please don't let us down. Please don't let not just us that are leaving down. Don't let this administration down. They deserve better than that. Don't let our staff down because they deserve a school committee that's focused on governance. Don't let our families down because if you get scattered like that, then nobody's driving the ship. Because at the end of the day, if you let that focus slip, if you get off course, and of course, this is the lesson of the first book that the superintendent had the district administration read together, is if the school committee loses focus and loses that and slips that, ultimately it's the kids who are going to suffer. So my challenge for you tonight is to not let us down. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.